Success loves silence, not because it's secretive or mysterious, but because it needs time and space to grow. Success, like a seed, begins quietly beneath the soil. It doesn't announce itself to the world. It doesn't demand attention or validation. It simply works steadily and silently until one day it emerges tall and strong for all to see. And yet, so many of us feel compelled to tell the world what we're doing, what we're planning, and how we're going to get there. Why is that? Maybe it's a need for recognition or approval. Maybe it's the thrill of saying, "Look at me, I'm on my way." But here's the problem. The more you talk about your plans, the less energy you have to actually execute them. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? Sharing too much can drain the very momentum you need to succeed. In my years of business and personal development, I've seen this play out time and time again. People with grand ideas and noble ambitions, ideas that could change their lives, talk themselves out of the very thing they set out to do. How? By telling too many people too soon. They expose their dreams to the cold winds of doubt, criticism, and distraction. Before they know it, the fire they once felt has burned out. So today, I want to share with you the philosophy of keeping your plans close to your chest, not out of secrecy, but out of wisdom. We'll explore how to cultivate a mindset that values action over words, focus over fanfare, and results over recognition. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you say you'll do that matters. It's what you actually accomplish. Keeping your plans to yourself can be so powerful. There's a subtle relationship between intention and action. Think about it. Every time you share your intentions, your goals, your dreams, your plans with others, you're releasing a bit of that energy. You're giving away a part of the fire that fuels your actions. In many cases, that fire is better kept contained, stoked in the quiet of your own mind, rather than exposed to the world too soon. One reason is simple. When you tell people what you're going to do, you create an illusion of progress. You say, "I'm starting a new business," or "I'm going to lose 20 pounds," and the people around you nod and smile, maybe even clap their hands in encouragement. It feels good, doesn't it? That sense of approval, that validation. But here's the danger. The mind can mistake that approval for accomplishment. You haven't actually done anything yet, but you've already tasted a little bit of the reward. And what happens next? The urgency to act diminishes. The fire cools. The dream that once seemed so vivid, so full of possibility, starts to feel like something you've already achieved in your mind. So you settle into a state of comfort, and the action, the real difficult work that makes the dream a reality, gets postponed. This is how dreams die, in the cradle of good intentions. Now, some might say, isn't it good to share your plans? Doesn't it keep you accountable? Well, accountability has its place, but only with the right people and at the right time. You see, not everyone who listens to your plans will understand them. Some will question your motives or doubt your abilities. They might not say it out loud, but their skepticism will hang in the air like a shadow over your ambition. And if you're not careful, that shadow can creep into your own thinking. Suddenly, you're second-guessing yourself. You're wondering if they're right, if maybe your idea isn't as good as you thought it was. Now, I'm not saying you should never share your ideas. No, that's not the point. The point is to share selectively, thoughtfully, and only when the time is right. You need to protect your vision in its early stages, like a gardener protecting young plants from frost. Share your plans with people who will nurture them, not trample on them. Seek out mentors or close friends who genuinely want to see you succeed. But even then, keep the details to a minimum. Don't let your ideas become a spectacle before they've had a chance to grow. Here's another thing to consider: the element of surprise. There's a certain power in doing the unexpected, in letting your results speak for themselves. Imagine this. You've been quietly working on a project for months, maybe even years. You haven't said a word about it to anyone outside your trusted circle. And then one day you unveil it to the world, a finished product, a completed goal, a shining achievement. The impact is far greater than if you'd been talking about it the whole time, dropping hints and previews along the way. People will marvel at what you've accomplished because it came out of nowhere. It's a reminder that action is always more impressive than words. Years ago, I knew a young man who wanted to start his own business. He was full of ideas and enthusiasm, and he couldn't wait to tell everyone about it. At every opportunity, He'd go on and on about his plans, what he was going to do, how successful he was going to be, how his life was about to change. People listened politely, but over time they started to grow skeptical. Why? Because months went by and nothing happened. The more he talked, the less people believed in him, and eventually, he stopped believing in himself. Contrast that with another man I knew, a farmer from the Midwest. He had a vision to turn his small family farm into a thriving enterprise. But instead of talking about it, he simply got to work. He read books, studied successful farmers, and quietly implemented new techniques. He didn't announce his plans. He let his results do the talking. When the time came to sell his crops, he shocked everyone with the quality and quantity of his harvest. People asked, "How did you do it?" And he simply smiled and said, "By working when no one was watching." You see, there's a lesson in that. The less you talk, the more time and energy you have to act. The less you seek validation, the more confidence you build within yourself. And the less you share your plans prematurely, the more control you have over your own narrative. It's not about secrecy, it's about strategy. It's about knowing that your dreams are worth protecting, and that your actions will always speak louder than your words. How many times have you shared a plan or a goal with someone, only to feel the motivation slip away afterward? How many times have you let the opinions of others influence your path? These are important questions because they reveal how much power we give away when we speak too soon. But the good news is, you can take that power back. You can choose to focus on action, to guard your dreams, and to let your success be the thing that speaks for you. The world is full of noise, isn't it? Opinions, distractions, unsolicited advice, they're everywhere. And when you start sharing your dreams too freely, you're inviting that noise into your life. You're opening the door to criticism, doubt, and even envy. These are forces that can derail even the best laid plans if you're not careful. Think about it. When you tell someone about your big idea, how often do they respond with genuine enthusiasm and support? Sometimes they do. But often people respond with caution, skepticism, or even subtle discouragement. They might say, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Or "That sounds risky," or "I knew someone who tried that and failed." These comments might seem harmless, but they can plant seeds of doubt in your mind. And doubt is a dangerous thing. It can grow quickly and choke the roots of your ambition. But it's not just the doubters you need to watch out for. There are also the envious, the people who resent your ambition, because it reminds them of what they haven't accomplished. They might not say it outright, but their subtle negativity can drain your energy just the same. And then there are the well-meaning advisors, the ones who genuinely want to help but end up confusing you with conflicting opinions and unsolicited suggestions. All of this noise can pull you away from your original vision, leaving you scattered and uncertain. That's why discretion is so powerful. When you keep your plans to yourself, you're protecting your focus. You're creating a quiet space where your ideas can grow free from the interference of others. It's like building a greenhouse for your dreams, a place where they can flourish in the right conditions until they're strong enough to face the elements. It's important to start building momentum. Momentum is a precious thing. It's the forward motion you create when you take consistent, purposeful action toward your goals. And here's the key. Momentum thrives in silence. When you're focused on doing the work rather than talking about the work, you build a rhythm. Each small step you take reinforces the next, and before you know it, you've made significant progress. But when you start talking about your plans prematurely, you disrupt that rhythm. You shift your focus from action to explanation, from doing to justifying. And every moment you spend explaining yourself is a moment you're not moving forward. It's like trying to drive a car while constantly stopping to show people where you're going. You lose speed. And worse, you lose the sense of purpose that comes from staying in motion. I want to share another story with you, one that illustrates the power of momentum and discretion. There was a friend of mine who decided to write a book. It was a lifelong dream, and he was determined to make it happen. But instead of announcing his plans to the world, he quietly set a goal: to write 500 words a day, every day, until the book was finished. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing, not even his closest friends. He just worked, day after day, in silence. Months later, he finally shared it with a small circle of trusted people. Their reaction? Pure admiration. They were amazed at what he had accomplished, not just because the book was good, but because he had done it without seeking attention or validation. And when the book was published, it was a success not because of any grand announcements, but because the work spoke for itself. Now let me tell you about another friend of mine, someone who was equally passionate about writing. But instead of getting to work, he spent months talking about his plans. He'd call with updates, share outlines, and ask for opinions on every little detail. The more he talked, the less he wrote. And eventually, the project fizzled out. Why? Because he spent all his energy seeking approval instead of building momentum. There's a powerful lesson in these two stories. Action breeds confidence, while too much talking breeds hesitation. When you take consistent action, even in small doses, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You build a track record, a sense of accomplishment that fuels your progress. But when you talk too much, you get stuck in the realm of possibilities, what could be, what might be, without ever crossing the bridge to reality. Here's the thing. Some people worry that keeping their plans private makes them seem secretive or aloof. But here's the truth. Discretion isn't about shutting people out. It's about preserving your focus. It's about recognizing that your dreams are precious, and that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your journey. Think of it this way. When you're planting a garden, you don't invite the whole neighborhood to walk through the soil before the seeds have sprouted. You protect the ground, you water it carefully, and you wait until the first shoots appear. Only then do you invite others to admire the fruits of your labor. The same principle applies to your goals. By keeping them private, you're not being secretive. You're being strategic. You're giving yourself the space to grow, to learn, and to adapt without the pressure of external expectations. And when the time comes to share your success, it will be all the more powerful because it's backed by real results. So here's a challenge for you. The next time you set a goal, resist the urge to announce it to the world. Instead, channel that energy into action. Write it down, make a plan, and take the first step quietly, deliberately, and with full focus. Remember, the goal isn't to impress others with your intentions. It's to impress yourself with your accomplishments. There's something profoundly liberating about moving in silence. It frees you from the weight of external expectations and allows you to operate on your own terms. Think about it. When you announce your plans to the world, you're putting yourself under a spotlight. Suddenly, people are watching, waiting, and maybe even judging. That pressure can be stifling, especially in the early stages of a project when things are still uncertain and fluid. You see, success is rarely a straight line. It's a journey of trial and error, of taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And when you're under the public eye, those setbacks can feel magnified. Every misstep becomes a potential point of criticism. Every delay, a source of scrutiny. But when you keep your plans private, you give yourself the freedom to fail quietly, to learn from your mistakes without the added burden of outside opinions. This is why discretion isn't just a strategy. It's a gift you give to yourself. It's a way of creating a safe space where you can experiment, grow, and refine your ideas without distraction. And here's the beautiful thing. When you're not seeking approval or validation, you become more connected to your own instincts. You start to trust yourself more deeply, to rely on your own judgment rather than the opinions of others. I know what you're thinking. Isn't feedback important? Don't I need input from others to make my ideas better? And the answer is yes, feedback is invaluable. But it has to come at the right time and from the right people. Not everyone is qualified to give you constructive input, and not every stage of your journey is the right time to seek it. Early on, when your vision is still taking shape, it's better to focus on the work itself. Once you've made progress, once you've built something tangible, that's the time to invite feedback from people you trust and respect. I once worked with a man who was incredibly gifted at spotting opportunities. He had a knack for seeing potential where others saw obstacles. But he had one fatal flaw. He couldn't stop talking about his ideas. Every time he came up with a new concept, he'd rush to share it with anyone who would listen. And what happened? More often than not, someone else would act on the idea before he did. He gave away his advantage by revealing his plans too soon. Contrast that with another businessman I knew, a quiet, unassuming fellow who rarely talked about what he was working on. He wasn't flashy or boastful, but he had a remarkable ability to execute. While others were busy talking, he was busy building. And when he unveiled his work, it was always impressive, well thought out, polished, and ready for the world to see. He didn't need to announce his intentions because his results spoke louder than words ever could. This brings us to another key principle. Results are your best advertisement. When you achieve something significant, people will take notice without you having to say a word. Your success will naturally attract attention, and that attention will be far more meaningful than anything you could have generated by talking about your plans prematurely. Think of it as a ripple effect. Your actions create waves that reach far and wide, touching people in ways that words never could. But there's another reason to keep your plans private, one that's often overlooked. It has to do with the power of focus. When you share your plans with others, you're not just giving away energy, you're also inviting distractions. People will start asking questions, offering suggestions, and sharing their own ideas, which can pull you in a dozen different directions. Before you know it, you've lost sight of your original goal, and your once clear vision has become muddled. Focus is one of the most precious resources you have. It's what allows you to channel your energy toward a single point, to cut through the noise and make real progress. And the best way to protect your focus is to limit the number of people who have access to your plans. The fewer voices you have in your ear, the easier it is to stay on track. What would it look like if you applied this principle to your own life? Imagine starting a new project, a business, a creative endeavor, a personal goal, and telling no one about it. Imagine working quietly, steadily, without seeking validation or approval. What might you accomplish in that space of silence? How much further could you go without the weight of outside expectations? This is the essence of what we're talking about today. The freedom to work on your own terms, the power to let your actions speak louder than your words, and the wisdom to protect your dreams until they're ready to be shared. It's not about being secretive or aloof. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that your energy, your focus, and your momentum are too valuable to waste on idle chat. And when the time comes to reveal what you've been working on, when the results are there for all to see, you'll find that your success carries a weight, a substance that words alone could never convey. You'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you didn't just talk about your dreams. You made them a reality. So the idea of keeping your plans private isn't about withholding or hiding. It's about understanding the value of your energy and focus. It's about protecting the fragile beginnings of your dreams, nurturing them in silence until they're strong enough to stand on their own. It's about recognizing that action is always more powerful than words, and that results speak louder than any announcement ever could. When you choose to keep your plans to yourself, you're making a statement not to the world, but to yourself. You're saying, I trust my ability to see this through. I don't need applause to get started, and I don't need permission to pursue my goals. That kind of confidence is rare, and it's incredibly powerful. It gives you the freedom to act without fear, to learn from your mistakes without judgment, and to grow at your own pace. And here's the beautiful part. When you succeed, you'll inspire others not by what you said you were going to do, but by what you've actually done. Your actions will become a beacon, a reminder to others that real progress comes from focus, discipline, and quiet determination. You'll show them that it's not about how loudly you proclaim your intentions. It's about how steadfastly you pursue them. So, as you move forward from here, I want to challenge you to embrace this philosophy. The next time you set a goal, resist the urge to announce it to the world. Instead, write it down, make a plan, and get to work. Let your actions do the talking, and let your results be the proof. Trust that when the time is right, the world will notice. And when they do, it will be because you've earned it. Remember, success doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need a spotlight or a stage. It grows quietly, steadily, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. So guard your dreams, nurture your focus, and let your actions speak for themselves. That's the path to true success, and it's a path worth walking. How many times have you stayed in a relationship, a friendship, or any connection that deep down you knew wasn't good for you? How many times have you held on to someone, even when your soul was screaming to let go? You see, too many of us are afraid to cut people off, afraid of what it might look like, afraid of the guilt that comes with walking away. But let me tell you, sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away, silently. No drama. No confrontation. Just peace. Because when you protect your peace, when you choose your growth over comfort, that's when you truly begin to rise. Life is about growth. It's about moving forward, evolving, and becoming the best version of yourself. But here's the thing. Not everyone is going to come along for the ride. You might want them to. You might even try to drag them with you, kicking and screaming. But the truth is, some people just aren't meant to stay in your life forever. And when you realize that, when you understand that some folks are holding you back, it's time to cut them off. Sometimes, the best way to do it is silently. Cutting people off silently doesn't mean being cold, cruel, or vindictive. It doesn't mean you're walking around with some grudge or a chip on your shoulder. No. What it means is you're making a conscious decision to remove toxic energy from your life without engaging in a messy confrontation, without feeding into the drama. It's about understanding that your peace of mind, your well-being, and your growth are far more important than holding on to relationships that no longer serve you. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wayne, it's hard to just cut people off, especially when they've been in your life for years, or when they're family, friends, people you care about. And you're right. It is hard. But let me tell you something. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Not everyone is aligned with your purpose. And if you're carrying people with you that weigh you down, how do you expect to rise? How do you expect to soar? We all have people in our lives who drain us. Maybe it's that friend who only calls you when they need something. Maybe it's that family member who's always criticizing, never supporting. Maybe it's someone you've been close to for years, but lately, you've noticed that being around them leaves you feeling depleted, anxious, or just plain unhappy. These people, they might not be bad people. They might not even know the effect they're having on you. But if someone constantly brings negativity into your life, if someone constantly holds you back, you have to make a decision. This decision isn't about them. It's not about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about you. It's about protecting your energy. It's about recognizing that you're responsible for your own happiness and well-being. You see, we often feel guilty for wanting to walk away from people, especially when we've known them for a long time. But longevity doesn't always equal loyalty. Just because someone's been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they're adding value to it. You have to ask yourself, what am I sacrificing by holding on to this person? Are you sacrificing your peace, your happiness, your mental clarity, your growth? Because those things are too precious to give away for the sake of keeping someone around. And here's the thing. Cutting someone off silently doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you're harboring resentment or anger. It simply means you're choosing to prioritize yourself. You're choosing to step into a space where you can flourish, where you can breathe freely, without the weight of negativity or toxic energy pulling you down. When you decide to cut someone off silently, you don't owe them an explanation. You don't need to justify why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes, we get caught up in thinking we have to explain ourselves, or that we have to offer closure. But here's the truth. Closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes closure comes from within. It comes from you deciding that you've had enough, that you deserve better, and that you're ready to move forward without carrying that baggage. And don't take this as an easy task. Cutting people off silently takes strength. It takes courage. It takes self-awareness. Because the moment you start choosing yourself, the moment you start removing people from your life who don't support your growth, there will be discomfort. You might feel lonely. You might question if you're doing the right thing. You might even doubt yourself, wondering if you're being selfish. But here's what I want you to remember. Self-care is not selfish. Prioritizing your well-being is not selfish. In fact, it's necessary. Look, you've got dreams. You've got goals. You've got places you want to be and things you want to accomplish. But you can't get there if you're constantly weighed down by negative energy. You can't get there if you're always surrounded by people who don't support your vision or your growth. So yes, it's hard to let people go. But it's even harder to stay stuck where you are because you're too afraid to move forward without them. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. You don't need to engage in a confrontation or a heated discussion. You don't need to make a scene or burn bridges. Silence is powerful. Silence is graceful. When you cut someone off silently, you're telling them and yourself that your peace matters more than their presence in your life. You're telling the universe that you're ready to create space for new energy, new opportunities, new relationships that align with who you are and where you're going. And here's something you need to understand. Not everyone will understand your decision. Some people might be confused, hurt, or even angry. But their reaction isn't your responsibility. You can't control how others feel or how they respond to your choices. What you can control is how you choose to live your life. You can control how you protect your energy and how you cultivate an environment that supports your growth. Too often, we hold on to people out of obligation. We think that just because someone is family, or just because we've been friends for years, we owe them our time, our energy, our presence. But loyalty is not about sticking around when it's harmful to your spirit. Loyalty is about staying true to yourself, your values, and your well-being. And sometimes, staying true to yourself means walking away quietly, without fear, without explanation. Now, cutting people off silently doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It doesn't mean you wish them ill or that you want to see them fail. On the contrary, you can still care about someone deeply while recognizing that their presence in your life is no longer serving you. You can love someone from a distance. You can wish them well from afar. But that doesn't mean they need to be in your inner circle. You see, your inner circle should be sacred. It should be filled with people who uplift you, who support your dreams, who encourage your growth. Your inner circle should be a reflection of the person you're striving to become. If someone isn't adding value to that space, if they're not contributing positively to your journey, then it's time to reevaluate their role in your life. And let me be clear, cutting someone off silently doesn't mean you're never going to speak to them again. It doesn't mean you're severing all ties forever. It simply means you're creating distance, setting boundaries, and choosing to protect your energy. Over time, people change. Relationships evolve. And sometimes, people you once connected with deeply may no longer align with where you're headed. That's okay. It's a natural part of life. But what's important is that you have the strength and the wisdom to recognize when it's time to let go. The beauty of cutting people off silently is that it allows you to maintain your dignity and your peace. You're not engaging in unnecessary conflict. You're not getting dragged into emotional turmoil. You're simply choosing to step back, to retreat into your own space, and to focus on what truly matters: your growth, your goals, your peace. Letting go is never easy, but sometimes holding on is even harder. And when you choose to cut people off silently, you're choosing to let go of the things that no longer serve you. You're choosing to create space for the things that will help you grow, the people who will support you, and the opportunities that will move you forward. So as you go through life, remember this: not everyone is meant to stay with you for the whole journey. Some people are only meant to be with you for a season, to teach you a lesson, or to help you along the way. And once that season is over, it's okay to move on. It's okay to cut ties silently and with grace, knowing that by doing so, you're creating space for something better. It's not about being ruthless. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, your peace are precious, and not everyone deserves access to that. So if someone is draining you, if someone is pulling you down, if someone is keeping you from becoming the person you're meant to be, cut them off silently. You don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your well-being. You don't need to justify why you're choosing peace over chaos, growth over stagnation. Just know that by making this choice, you're taking a powerful step toward living a life that is aligned with your higher self. And in doing so, you'll find that the people who truly belong in your life, the ones who support your growth and your journey, will naturally gravitate toward you. Because when you're at peace with yourself, you attract peace into your life. When you choose growth, you attract people who want to grow with you. So cut them off silently, not out of malice, but out of love. Love for yourself, love for your journey, and love for the life you're creating. And watch how your world begins to shift. Watch how, when you clear out the negativity, you make room for the positivity, the growth, and the peace that's waiting for you. You deserve that. You owe it to yourself. That decision to protect your peace is one of the most powerful acts of self-love. It's about creating boundaries and ensuring that you aren't allowing anyone to rob you of your joy, your energy, or your purpose. And look, I get it. Cutting people off sounds extreme, especially if you're someone who values loyalty, who holds relationships close to the heart. But sometimes, silence is the most respectful way to exit someone's life. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to simply walk away without explanation, without drama, without any grand announcements. Just walk away. Why? Silently. Because sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Sometimes, walking away without a scene shows a level of maturity, a level of self-awareness. You're saying, I value my energy enough to not engage in any back and forth. I value myself enough to not explain why I'm stepping back. I'm just doing it because I know what's best for me. When you cut someone off silently, you are making a clear statement. My time, my peace, my growth are too valuable to be wasted. You're telling the universe, I'm ready to elevate, and I won't allow anyone to hold me back. Now, cutting people off doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't love them. But there's a point in life where you've got to put yourself first. You've got to protect your space. If someone is causing you more harm than good, if their presence in your life is creating more pain than peace, it's time to let them go. And not in a loud, dramatic way. Just quietly, gracefully, and with love. And trust me, sometimes those people won't even realize you've moved on until they look around and you're no longer there. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes, the people you need to cut off aren't toxic in the traditional sense. They might not be doing anything overtly wrong. They might even think they're helping you. But maybe they just don't get you. Maybe their energy doesn't match yours. Maybe they're not supportive of your dreams, or they don't believe in your vision. Maybe they're too comfortable with you staying exactly where you are. And let me tell you something, staying stagnant just to make someone else comfortable? That's not an option. That's not how you grow. Growth means change. And change often means leaving some people behind. It means recognizing that not everyone is meant to be part of your journey forever. Some people are only meant to be with you for a season. And when that season ends, it's okay to move on. You don't have to make a big show of it. You don't have to justify why you're choosing to move forward without them. You just quietly shift your focus, elevate your energy, and continue on your path. The reality is, not everyone is going to understand your journey. Not everyone is going to support the changes you're making. Some people will be comfortable with the version of you that they've always known, the version of you that they can control, that fits neatly into their idea of who you should be. But as you evolve, as you grow, you'll start to realize that you need to be surrounded by people who support the version of you that you're becoming, not the version of you that you used to be. And that's why protecting your peace is so important. It's not about cutting people off just for the sake of it. It's about making sure that your energy is aligned with the people you surround yourself with. It's about ensuring that the relationships in your life are serving you, helping you grow, and bringing positivity into your space. Anything less than that has got to go. Now, don't get me wrong, this process isn't easy. It takes a lot of strength to walk away from people, especially those who've been in your life for a long time. It can feel lonely at times. You might question whether you're making the right decision. You might even feel guilty for choosing yourself. But let me tell you something. Choosing yourself is never a bad decision. Prioritizing your peace is never a mistake. It's an act of self-love, and it's something that will ultimately lead you to a more fulfilling, more authentic life. Think of it like this. Your energy, your peace, your well-being, they're like a garden. If you don't tend to your garden, if you let weeds take over, it won't thrive. Weeds might not always be immediately harmful, but over time, they can choke out the good. They can prevent your garden from growing and blooming the way it's supposed to. So when you silently cut people off, when you create distance between yourself and those who aren't contributing to your growth, you're pulling out the weeds. You're making room for the flowers to flourish. This doesn't mean you have to shut people out completely. It doesn't mean you have to cut off every single person who disagrees with you or who doesn't understand your path. But it does mean that you have to be discerning about who you allow into your inner circle. You have to be intentional about the energy you let into your space. Because not everyone is meant to have access to you. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. When you start protecting your peace, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel lighter. You'll feel more focused. You'll feel more in tune with your own energy and your own purpose. And the people who are meant to be in your life, the ones who truly support you in your growth, they'll be there. They'll understand the boundaries you've set, and they'll respect them. They won't take it personally when you need to step back, when you need to focus on yourself. Because those are the people who genuinely want to see you win. Those are the people who are rooting for you, even if it means they're no longer as close to you as they once were. And let's be clear, protecting your peace doesn't mean isolating yourself. It doesn't mean cutting off everyone and retreating into a bubble. What it means is that you're creating a space for the right people, the right energy, the right opportunities to come into your life. It means you're prioritizing the things that bring you joy, that make you feel fulfilled, that push you toward your highest potential. The more you protect your peace, the more you'll realize how much of your energy was being drained by unnecessary stress, by people who didn't have your best interest at heart, by situations that weren't serving your growth. You'll start to see that when you cut those things off, when you do it silently, without drama, without engaging in negativity, you're left with a clearer, more focused mind. You're left with the energy to pursue your passions, to follow your purpose, to truly live the life you're meant to live. Now, some people won't like this. They won't like the fact that you're setting boundaries, that you're choosing to prioritize your peace over their needs or their expectations. They might call you selfish. They might say you've changed. And you know what? You have changed. You've grown. You've evolved. And that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Change is inevitable. Growth is a choice. Every day, you have the choice to either stay stuck in the same patterns, surrounded by the same people, or to step into a new chapter of your life, one that is filled with more peace, more clarity, more purpose. But you can't do that if you're constantly weighed down by the negativity of others, by the drama, by the toxic energy that drains you. That's why cutting people off silently is such a powerful act. It's not about being petty or spiteful. It's about choosing yourself. It's about recognizing that you have the power to control who and what you allow into your life. And when you make that choice, when you decide to protect your peace, you're telling the universe that you're ready for more. You're ready for the abundance, the joy, the success that's waiting for you. So, if you're finding yourself in situations where you're constantly drained, constantly stressed, constantly feeling like you're not enough, it's time to make a change. It's time to cut off the people, the situations, the habits that are no longer serving you. Do it silently. Do it gracefully, and watch how your life begins to transform. Because here's the truth, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give to others. You can't pursue your dreams. You can't live your purpose if you're constantly depleted. You've got to fill yourself up first. You've got to protect your peace. You've got to create boundaries that allow you to thrive, to grow, to become the person you're meant to be. And once you do that, once you make the decision to prioritize your peace, you'll start to see everything else fall into place. You'll attract the right people, the right opportunities, the right energy into your life. You'll be more in tune with your purpose, more aligned with your vision. You'll be living from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. So, protect your peace. It's not just an act of self-care. It's an act of self-love. It's a declaration that you are worthy of joy, of growth, of success. And that's what it's all about. Growth requires sacrifice. It requires hard decisions. And yes, it requires cutting off the people who don't believe in where you're going. You can't be worried about hurting someone's feelings when your future is on the line. You can't hold yourself back just because someone else isn't ready to see you rise. So, you cut them off silently, and you keep it moving. Look, the hardest part about cutting people off is the guilt. That guilt will creep in and try to convince you that you're doing something wrong. It'll tell you that you're abandoning people, that you're being selfish, that you owe them an explanation. But let me tell you something. You owe it to yourself to be happy. You owe it to yourself to grow. You owe it to yourself to be surrounded by people who lift you up, not bring you down. It's not selfish to prioritize your peace. It's necessary. And you know what? Sometimes, cutting people off silently is the wake-up call they need. Sometimes your absence is what will make them realize the impact they had on your life. They'll start to reflect. They'll start to question why you distanced yourself. And maybe, just maybe, they'll begin their own journey of growth. But that's not your concern. Your concern is making sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, the ones who push you, challenge you, and support your vision. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should walk away from every person who disagrees with you, or every person who makes a mistake. No. We're all human. We all mess up. But there's a difference between someone who genuinely cares for you, and occasionally stumbles, and someone who continuously drains your energy, disrespects your boundaries, or undermines your growth. And it's up to you to know that difference. It's up to you to make that call. And let me tell you, once you start cutting people off, once you start protecting your peace, things start to shift. You'll find yourself surrounded by people who get it, who understand the journey you're on. You'll find that your energy will shift. You'll feel lighter, more focused, more in tune with your purpose. Because when you clear out the clutter, when you remove the people who aren't aligned with your vision, you make space for the ones who are. You see, it's not just about cutting people off. It's about making room for the right people to enter your life. It's about creating an environment that supports your growth, that fuels your fire. And when you do that, when you surround yourself with people who uplift you, who challenge you to be better, who believe in you, you start to elevate. Your whole life starts to elevate. But it starts with that first step. It starts with being brave enough to say, this isn't working for me anymore, and finally stepping away. No drama. No explanations. Just silence. And in that silence, you find your power. You find your peace. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. In fact, it might be one of the hardest things you do. But remember this, you are not responsible for anyone else's growth. You are responsible for your own. And if someone is holding you back, if someone is not aligned with where you're going, you have every right, no, you have an obligation to remove them from your life. When you start to realize that your energy is finite, you'll begin to understand why protecting it is crucial. The more energy you spend on people who drain you, the less energy you have for yourself, your dreams, and your growth. Your peace of mind, your purpose, your goals, they all deserve your full attention. And the people who truly care about you, who truly understand where you're going, they won't mind if you need to take a step back. They won't mind if you need to focus on yourself for a while. The ones who do mind, the ones who take offense to your growth, who feel threatened by your progress, those are the ones who were never really for you in the first place. And that's the hardest pill to swallow. Sometimes, the people you thought would be in your corner forever, the ones you thought would be cheering you on, are the ones who secretly hope you'll stay the same. They're the ones who fear your growth because it forces them to confront their own stagnation. But that's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for someone else's inability to grow. You are not responsible for dimming your light just so someone else feels comfortable in your presence. You are responsible for shining as bright as you can, for fulfilling your potential, for becoming everything you're meant to be. So yes, you cut them off silently. You step back and let them figure it out on their own. No hard feelings, no bitterness, just an understanding that your paths are no longer aligned. And you know what? Sometimes, that silent departure is the catalyst they need to start their own journey of growth. But even if it's not, that's okay. Your journey isn't tied to theirs. The guilt might still linger. You might question whether you could have done more, said more, tried harder. But remember this, your responsibility is to yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't show up for others if you're constantly drained, constantly sacrificing your peace for the sake of someone else's comfort. At some point, you have to choose yourself. And when you do, you'll find that everything else starts to fall into place. When you cut people off silently, you're not just walking away from them. You're walking towards something greater. You're walking toward a version of yourself that is stronger, more focused, more aligned with your purpose. And that version of yourself doesn't have time for drama. That version of yourself doesn't have time for people who don't believe in you, who don't respect your boundaries, who don't support your growth. And let's be real, growth isn't always pretty. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to confront parts of yourself and your relationships that you might have been avoiding. But it's necessary. It's the only way you'll reach your full potential. And sometimes, that means leaving people behind. Not because you don't care about them, but because you care about yourself enough to do what's best for you. That's the key. You're doing this for you. You're cutting people off not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. Out of a deep understanding that you deserve peace. That you deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift you, who push you to be better, who believe in your vision. And when you start to operate from that place of self-love, you'll notice a shift. You'll notice that the right people start to show up in your life, the ones who match your energy, who respect your boundaries, who support your growth. It's like the universe responds to the energy you put out. When you start prioritizing your peace, when you start cutting off the people who drain you, the universe starts sending people into your life who align with your purpose. People who see you, who understand you, who are ready to grow with you. And that's what it's all about. It's about creating a life that feels good, that feels aligned, that feels purposeful. And you can't do that if you're constantly weighed down by people who don't believe in you, who don't respect your boundaries, who don't support your growth. So, yes, it's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely at times. But it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own happiness. You're responsible for your own growth. And if that means cutting people off, if that means walking away in silence, then so be it. In that silence, you'll find your power. In that silence, you'll find your peace. And in that peace, you'll find the clarity you need to keep moving forward, to keep growing, to keep becoming the best version of yourself. So don't be afraid to cut people off. Don't be afraid to prioritize your peace. Don't be afraid to choose yourself. Because when you do, you'll find that everything else starts to fall into place. You'll attract the right people, the right opportunities, the right energy into your life. And you'll start to realize that protecting your peace isn't just an act of self-care, it's an act of self-preservation. It's a declaration that you are worthy of joy, of growth, of success. And that's what it's all about. So as I wrap this up, I want you to think about the people in your life. I want you to reflect on your relationships, your friendships, your connections. Are they adding to your growth, or are they holding you back? Are they helping you elevate, or are they keeping you stagnant? And if you find that someone isn't serving your growth, if you find that someone's energy is pulling you down, then it's time. It's time to cut them off. Silently, gracefully, with love, and keep moving forward. Because at the end of the day, your journey is yours. Your growth is yours. And sometimes in order to rise, you've got to let go of the things and the people that are weighing you down. So take that step. Protect your peace. And watch how your life begins to change when you prioritize yourself. If a totally disastrous life brings you to a point of awakening, now, retrospectively, suddenly, it fulfilled a purpose. Suffering in your life. If it still arises, use it so that the ego gets burned up by the suffering. So to speak, the ego gets burned up in this fire of suffering. Now we can call this conscious suffering. It's a very interesting concept. Conscious suffering, when suffering arises, become aware of it and accept that it's there in the form of fear, anxiety, regret, a self-pity, an unhappy sense of self, or complaining. All your life, many forms of suffering, you've lost things. You don't know things you had identified with. Taken away from you. Who am I now? I'm nobody. I'm nobody. Well, that's great. Be nobody more completely. Realize fully you're a nobody. Mess, haha. I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost everything. All the things I've worked for are probably gone. Everything is so pointless. But, as your mind is still talking, it's all been for nothing. It's all meaningless. Meaningless. This is your mind talking. Don't believe in the things it says. But it continues talking. Many humans in this world are suffering from what we could call nihilism. I don't know if you know that word, nihilism. Nihilism means the belief that everything is absolutely and utterly pointless. That's a deep form of suffering. Nihilism doesn't just mean, what's the point of it all? It's not just this awful life of mine that is pointless. The whole world is pointless. It's so awful. And that's very deep suffering, the total lack of meaning. Everything is arbitrary and random. Meaninglessness is a mental disease that is inflicting millions of humans. It's because everybody, the mainstream culture, still believes in it. It goes back to the 19th century. It goes back to Darwin's Origin of Species. Darwin said life evolved, which undoubtedly is true. But he said life evolved as an arbitrary, random course of events, molecules and atoms at random, coming together and forming life forms over millions of years. Random. The idea of randomness in the theory of evolution, put forward by Darwin and others, means there's no purpose or intelligence behind it whatsoever. It's a random process. In other words, it's the belief that all life on this planet has no meaning. It just is a meaningless conglomeration of atoms and molecules. It's ultimately meaningless. That, basically, is the underlying assumption behind the theory of evolution that many people still believe. And it is saved into mainstream culture. And even people who have never even heard of Darwin have it saved into their belief system. That we live in a meaningless universe. Before that happened, we had certain religious beliefs. So, there was some meaning. And although a lot of that, perhaps, was ideological and ego-driven, nevertheless, in the ancient religions, there was access to the transcendent. Here and there were still little openings into the transcendent, even though many forms of religion developed into ideological belief systems that strengthened the ego. Nevertheless, religion still carried, or still carries, the secret of transcendence, hiding within the religions. That became inaccessible to many humans. So now, we have the pandemic of nihilism. This is one of the pandemics far worse than any physical pandemic. The belief that everything is meaningless. And you can have a meaning in your life that is very limited. For many people, the meaning is, okay, I want to have a career. That gives you limited meaning in your personal life. I'm working for a career. Nothing wrong with that. I'm working to create a better life for myself and my family. That's also wonderful and great. I'm working to achieve recognition in this world, etc., etc. That's fine too. But at some point, meaning that is purely personal may begin to lose its power. Let's say you've spent 2 or 3 decades working on your career, which is fine. At some point, you may arrive at a place where your career doesn't mean anything anymore, or you lose it. You lose your career and your status, or it consumes you so completely that you become ill with stress, or in some other way, it turns into something that's not satisfying at all. It actually creates suffering. Something can give you limited meaning for a while, for years, and then suddenly turn out to be ultimately meaningless. Some people suddenly wake up and think, my whole life. Some people fall seriously ill, and then they look back on their life and see, this was so pointless, accumulating possessions. Why did I do that? What was the point of it? All the things I was so anxious about when now there's... Let's say I'm seriously ill now. All the things I was so anxious about that they created. What was that? All the things they've been striving for will ultimately seem pointless. That can be an opening. Suddenly, wow, the limited personal meaning which was fine. It's better than no meaning at all can open the door to a deeper realization. To have a personal meaning in your life is better than no meaning at all. But, ultimately, that's not satisfying in the long term. You have to go deeper to a deeper meaning that transcends who you are as a person. And that is, am I aligned with the purpose of the universe? That is the ultimate true meaning. Am I aligned with the purpose? And what is the purpose of the universe? The purpose of the universe is consciousness, bringing more consciousness into this dimension. That's the purpose of the universe, bringing more consciousness into this dimension. Am I aligned with that? If that is the case, if you are aligned with that, you are a bringer of consciousness, a bringer of light. That is the ultimate, true purpose. It could be that your personal purpose and the deeper purpose can go together. That's fine. You can have a career, and yet it's not totally ego-dominated. While you are active, working, you bring in the light of consciousness. You do things in your work that bring more consciousness into this dimension. That's wonderful. So you can have it. It's not necessarily a case of either having a career or being aligned with the universal purpose. You can bring the two together. That's perfectly fine. That's the balance between being and doing, as I sometimes call it, the balance between being and doing. Bringing those two together. But the purpose, there's only one true purpose in your life, and that you have to discover. That is, am I aligned with consciousness? Am I a bringer of consciousness? So that's the end of nihilism. At that point, it no longer matters. Your entire past becomes relatively unimportant when you realize the meaning of life is to be a bringer of consciousness. Let's say your entire past was one disaster after another. Unfortunately, for some people, life is like that. Let's say you ended up in prison because you did one wrong and bad thing after another. You look back on your so-called life and think, my God, That was a disaster. My entire life was just a disaster. Okay. But at this moment you realize the consciousness that you are. All the suffering you have created for yourself and others, all the suffering was part of the egoic dream, the delusion, the egoic delusion, and the conditioning that you came into this world with. Then you awaken at this moment. If a totally disastrous life brings you to a point of awakening, the whole thing was great because it suddenly has a purpose retrospectively. All the disasters brought you to this moment of awakening. So, in retrospect, what was totally absurd and meaningless suddenly fulfilled a purpose. The past can suddenly be realized as having fulfilled its purpose by creating the suffering that led to your awakening. Ha, tahi. There's no regret anymore about the past. It all made sense. Meaning arises retrospectively. It only remains absurd and disastrous if the awakening doesn't happen. Then you're trapped in the dreadful dream, continuing to be trapped in it. Wow. So, be aligned with universal purpose. That is the ultimate birth. No matter what you do, no matter how it expresses itself through you, that doesn't matter. But realize this. If you want to look at your life in terms of failure and success, as many people do, you might ask, is my life a failure? Is my life a success? How do you determine that? What criterion do you use for failure or success? Do you allow this world to tell you whether you're a failure or a success? To a large extent, this world is insane. So, are you allowing an insane world to tell you whether your life is a failure or a success? Ha, ha, ha. Well now, if this world cannot tell you, then what? Obviously, the only true criterion is whether you are conscious or not in this moment, purely conscious in this moment, instead of being totally immersed in the dream of your conditioned awareness, the fictitious person. If you are conscious in this moment, then that is the greatest and only true success that could exist in this life. Your entire past becomes irrelevant. If it has taken you to this point in that sense, it is relevant, but ultimately, it's irrelevant. You're awake in this moment. You represent the awakened state of consciousness in humanity. Oh, wow. That's success. Nothing else is success. Even if you want to use the term success, I'd probably recommend avoiding it. Because that would imply there's somebody there saying, I have achieved consciousness. Again, you'd create another conceptual identity in your mind. Another form of ego that says, I am conscious, unlike all these other people who are not conscious. I have achieved something. I have achieved awakening. That's a delusion again. The I that claims to have achieved awakening is the ego again, an ego that claims some kind of achievement. True meaning can only arise when the ego subsides, when it becomes transparent, and awakening happens. But it's not an achievement. There's nobody there to have achieved anything. It's something that happens through you. The ego in some way created it in a negative sense, because the ego created the suffering that led to the awakening. In that sense, perhaps, the ego did achieve it. But ultimately to claim, I have achieved awakening, is an ego delusion. So, nihilism is a disease. It's a form of suffering that can lead to awakening. But it can also lead to despair, suicide, or bitterness. It may even lead to drug use and attempt to desensitize oneself against the suffering of meaninglessness. This epidemic of drug addiction we see today often stems from this root cause, a desperate attempt to escape the unbearable weight of meaninglessness. There's a very urgent need for the awakening of humanity. There's a great urgency now because we are moving into a collectively critical situation on this planet. Awakening is absolutely necessary. Nobody awakens in their comfort zone. Nobody awakens when the conditions are what your mind might call optimum conditions for awakening. Nothing disturbs me. I get peace and quiet around me. I'm particularly wealthy. No challenges distract me from my meditation periods. Excellent food. Everything is pure and clean. 2 massages every day with essential oils. Fantastic conditions for spiritual awakening. Let's say you're in a spa where you pay $2,000 per day. You've won the lottery, so you go to this spa. These are ideal conditions for awakening. Would you awaken there? You might become very peaceful. It would be very pleasant. But you'd be like a plant growing in a protected environment, a greenhouse with just the right temperature. The plant grows quickly, blossoms, but is weak. The moment it's put outside, it would collapse. It hasn't developed the inner strength to exist in the real world. For awakening, the challenges you experience in your daily life now are your best tools. They are the optimum way of awakening. Use the challenges you're facing in daily life. Don't believe, if I could only find an ideal situation, then I would easily awaken spiritually. No, you wouldn't. After some initial pleasant experiences in your imaginary spa, your level of consciousness would actually decrease. Gradually, you'd go back to sleep. The comfort would lull you to sleep. Presence only rises when it's necessary. Nothing comes unless it's needed. There needs to be a call for it. There needs to be a gap between the current situation and what is needed to remedy it. Things need to be difficult. Otherwise, change doesn't happen.